Happy Sunday. I hope you've all been having a really great weekend. I am excited to be here today to talk a little bit about college planning with school getting ready to go back into session. I seemed like this was a really good time to talk about making that plan for a ninth grade through the end of 11th grade as your students are getting ready to go back to school and start thinking about what's coming next, thinking about the college planning and all that goes into that process. So I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about that. If you are new here, my name is Gina. I'm with Advantage College Planning, and I do Facebook Lives every couple of weeks, and the topics are always something related to the college planning process. Advantage College Planning has many offices all over the United States. We are growing, which is really exciting. Our main office where I am located is in the Raleigh area. We have a Raleigh location as well as an Apex location. And then we also have offices in Maine, Buffalo, New York, Orlando, Florida, and now over on the West Coast in the Bay Area as well. So really excited to be working with students and families all over the country and helping you with this process to keep it as calm and stress-free and informative as possible. So again, our topic for this evening is around the time frame of college planning and helping you really understand what you should be focusing on each year. So as you are coming in and getting settled, go ahead and put in the chat and just let me know where you're coming in from. Again, like I said, we now have offices in multiple places all across the US. So it's always great to know where everyone's coming in from. And also, if you could let me know what year your students are. So we'll be talking about college planning from ninth grade through the end of 11th grade. But if you've got younger students, we start working with students as early as eighth grade at Advantage. So, having an idea of the age of your students will be really helpful so I can make sure I'm targeting exactly what you are looking for. There will be an opportunity at the end too for me to answer some questions. So as your questions start coming up, just go ahead and put them in the chat, just like you are right now with where you're from and what year your students are. I'll see them over there and I'll be able to address them throughout and then definitely get to some questions at the end. Awesome. Lots of 10th and 11th graders. Yep, that's usually a pretty big group. Great. Welcome. Well, I'm excited that you all are here. Great. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and jump right in, shall we? So college planning really can start at any point. Again, we start working with students as early as eighth grade at Advantage College Planning, and we have new students coming in all the time, all the way up through senior year. So there's really no point that we feel like it's too late, right? It's a lot of times families will come and they'll say, is this the right time? Are we too early? Are we too late? Too late would be after the deadlines have passed for the student to apply for the term that they're interested in, right? So that would be a little bit too late. But anything up until that, we really have an opportunity to try to think about where your student wants to go and then figure out what we can do to help support your student in that journey, and think about the steps to get them there. But ideally, this thinking about college really can start as early as middle school. But when we're thinking about the college process, ninth grade is where we start, and that's welcome to high school. So for those of you who have rising ninth graders, I think I saw one. John's got a rising ninth grader. That's really exciting, Kristen. And then for those of you who've got students who made it through the junior and senior and sophomore families in here, congratulations. There's a lot of nerves going into freshman year. It's such a big start. It's high school. It's overwhelming. It's exciting. Going into high school is this really big transition where it feels like anything is possible and everything is overwhelming all at once. And that's okay. It's okay that it feels that way. It's a big life change. And I find that with my students, as they're getting ready to make this transition up into ninth grade, it is a little bit scary. There is going to be a lot of change that happens that year with what classes they're interested in, their friend groups, what their interests are. All those kinds of things might shift throughout that year. But we can try to make it feel a little bit less stressful by giving them just a couple of very specific things to focus on. So when we're thinking about college planning in ninth grade, we don't want to overwhelm the students. So again, keep in mind, they're already going through this really big transition. They don't need that extra pressure and that extra stress of, and now that it's high school, the clock is ticking and we also have to figure out exactly where you're going to college and what your major will be and what career you're going to do from now until you retire, right? That's a lot. So let's take that back a little bit and let's start to think about two really specific areas that the student should focus on for ninth grade. The first is academics, and you're going to see that as a common theme throughout all of these years. Academics is going to be their most important area of focus because when it comes to building a strong college application, academics are key. A student can have incredible extracurricular activities and letters of recommendation, but if their core academics aren't strong and aren't a good reflection of their ability, then they're really going to struggle in that college application process. So when students are going into ninth grade, I sit down with them and we create what I call a 4-year plan. And so we map out, okay, this is what you're thinking of doing in ninth grade. These are what your classes are. Where do we want to go, right? What does 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade potentially look like? And again, this is not so that we can have a master list that we then have to stick to rigidly for all 4 years. This is a Google document. This is not a PDF. It's a Google Doc. It can be changed and updated at any time. It is a live document. That's perfect. That's exactly what we need for this. Because what we want to do is we just want to start backwards planning a little bit. We want to think about, okay, you're in ninth grade now, you have college in mind, you think that's where you want to go, great. Let's make sure that we are creating what we would call an upward trend in your academic rigor. So if we think about an upward trend, right, then that means that each year your classes are getting a little bit harder as you progress through high school. Ideally, we're also thinking about your grades going up or staying steady, kind of at a high level as we make that upward trend. So let's plan ahead. Let's think about what the student's strengths are. If you have a student who's really strong in math, let's say, right, then you'd want to look to see, okay, what are the highest level math courses that my high school offers? You can go on the high school's website, go to the student services page, go to course registration, and you should find some kind of document there that will show all the courses that are available to students, especially once they get into those 11th and 12th grade years. For many schools, that's going to include AP Calculus AB, AP Calculus BC, AP Statistics. These are really common high-level math classes. If your student really likes math, then we need to start thinking, okay, what level are they at right now in math? And okay, they want to get to, let's say, AP Calculus BC. So then we need to learn a little bit about the school. We need to find out, are there any limitations in place? Will they allow a student to take multiple math courses in 1 year? How many levels is your student away from that AP Calculus BC course? Over the course of 4 years, whether your school has year-long classes or semester-long classes, is there enough room in there to get from where they are to AP Calculus BC by second semester senior year? If so, then let's start planning out. Okay, well, then that means that this is what you would have to take junior year and sophomore year. Okay, sophomore year, and then we can kind of backwards plan. If you realize early on, hey, I really want to have the possibility of getting to AP Calculus BC, but with the way that it's playing out, I don't know if that's even going to be possible at my school based on the way the schedule is structured. That is a good thing to identify early on, right? Because now we can have conversation. We can talk with you can talk with a school counselor. You and your student can talk with a school counselor, look and see what other options there are to maximize that student's ability in math. And the same would be true for other content areas as well. There are AP and International Baccalaureate IB classes at schools that offer the IB program level courses in history, in science, in English and language arts, and then in other areas too, like economics or psychology or computer science. There's all these other high-level classes that students can build to. So the first thing we want to do is identify, what is it that your student tends to be strong in? What does your school offer? And let's start backwards planning for that. The other area that you want to start thinking about your backwards planning is around the elective classes. So these classes are a great way for a student to explore interest or what they might want to study. Sometimes they have prerequisites though. So in order to take AP computer science, I'll just use that for an example, you might have to take a fundamental kind of foundational level honors computer science course to even be able to get to that AP computer science. So let's start planning ahead. And again, thinking, are there any prerequisites, or just explore what kind of elective classes does my school offer? Is my student really interested in creative arts? What kind of arts classes do they offer? What kind of theater classes? So just start to get familiar with the menu that's on the table so that you have an idea of what you might want to pick and choose as your student goes through these next 4 years. So having a plan is really going to be helpful. Students are allowed to change their mind. They're allowed to change their goals. Your student today could tell you that their goal is to go and, get an engineering degree in college. If that's the case, then we probably need some pretty strong math classes. But if along the way your student realizes they don't really love math and it's not their biggest strength, this other content area is, it's okay then for them to pivot and find something else that's a really great fit for their interests and also for their academics. So their goals are allowed to change, everything's allowed to change, but we just want to make sure we have a vision. Second to academics, the other thing that we want students to be thinking about are their extracurricular activities. So their college activity list starts now. So freshman year, this is the information that we get to start from when we're creating that college activity list on the Common application in a couple of years. So let's get something on there. Anything, just get involved. Whether it's like joining a club, getting a part-time job, playing sports, dance, theater, volunteering, a robotics team, joining band, whatever it is, right? It could be a chance for your student to try something new that maybe they didn't have a chance to do in middle school. Or maybe they want to do something that they've done in middle school and continue it in high school. It's comfortable, they like it. Great. But this is going to help them in two ways. One, it's going to help them have something to do and meet some people and get involved in the school. That's so important. Who are you going to sit with at lunch? Who are you going to talk to in your classes? Finding your people, getting organized. I feel like we focus so much ninth grade on the academics, and it is important. And I did start with that, but students are going to be more academically successful often if they're feeling confident and they're feeling like they're socially finding their fit and they're finding their people. So encourage your student to look at the different clubs, organizations, and opportunities that are available at the high school and pick one or two that they know they want to seek out in that first 1 or 2 weeks of school when they have the open club fairs and those kinds of things. Now, parents, this part is for you, the financial planning. So it's really helpful, sometimes awkward, but important, to start thinking ahead about the cost of college and how you're going to be funding your students' education, and also start to think about what is realistic and appropriate for you as a family to be contributing to your students' education each year. What does that going to look like? Are you anticipating that your student will take out student loans and have a part-time job to help contribute to their college fund? Are you planning on paying for that completely separately on your own? Will it be kind of a balance between the two? What does that look like? And what amount of money each year do you think is appropriate? I understand that families often don't talk with their students about finances. However, when it comes to college, it's really important for your student to have an idea of what they're working with. Manage expectations now so that you can be on the same team and planning ahead. And this way, nobody's feeling blindsided or confused once those admissions decisions and financial aid packages come out a few years later. So just start having those conversations now. That's it. Academics and extracurriculars and financial planning for the parents. But for the student, those two things, if they can nail those two things freshman year, I'm happy. That's really where they need to be. Now, once they get into sophomore year, we need to go up a little bit, right? Upward trend applies to all categories here. So for my sophomores, we need to, again, go back to the academics and we need to reassess that 4-year plan. We might need to make some adjustments to that Google Doc. Maybe your student did want to do some higher level math, tried it out, and struggled. And now we need to kind of dial it back a little bit. Or maybe they realized, hey, I was really good at this. I didn't think I was going to love, science, but I did really great. And I think I want to try a higher level science course next year than what I was planning. Awesome, right? Maybe the school has started offering something new that they didn't offer last year. Great. So every year we want to do this little readjustment, reassessment. But think a little bit again about, okay, here's now what I'm thinking for sophomore year, junior, and senior year. How is this aligning with my 9th grade academic performance? And how is this aligning with what my goals are at this point? Things are allowed to change. It's also a really good time for students to think back about what went well in 9th grade and where could I have improved, right? That self-reflection is a great skill. It's never too early or too late to start building that in. So I weave that into our conversations about academics. When it comes to activities, 10th grade is when their activities need to start going a little bit deeper. So ninth grade, we're scratching the surface, we're joining some clubs, we're kind of getting our bearings. We're a member, right? We're at member level. We show up to the 30-minute meeting during smart lunch, and maybe we don't do too much else, and that's okay because we're a freshman and that's fine. But by the time we're a sophomore, we need to start stepping it up a little bit. Right? Think about yourself, as an employee, if you work outside the home, right? Maybe your first year, yeah, like you kind of figured everything out, you got your bearings, but by that second year, people were expecting you to start taking on some more responsibility. Well, it's kind of the same thing, right? So we need to start thinking about what clubs and organizations or sports or different activities were you really enjoying? What do you want to continue doing? What are we going to move on from? It's okay to pivot, but then how can we take what you were already doing and bring it to the next level? What do you love? What are you learning? How are you contributing to this group? How is this group better because you are in it? And that I love that question because a lot of times students think contributing and having a big impact has to be literally this big significant thing. And if you don't have the title of captain or president or something like that, then you aren't really contributing. And as adults, we know that that's not true, right? Every single person in any kind of ecosystem is contributing something, right? And some people have titles and some people don't. But that doesn't mean that everyone in the group isn't having some kind of impact. So what I want my students to do and what you can encourage your student to do is start to be a little bit more intentional and start to think about what are your strengths and how are you using those in these different areas. How are you contributing? Explore your potential interests as well for majors. So at this point, sometimes students have started to do some different assessments, personality assessments we recommend, or skills assessments. We do those with our students. And we start to look at what are your interests, but also what are your natural strengths? What are the areas where you're predisposed to shine in ways that are unique from others? And once the students can put language to that and start to identify with that, it can really help them start to see more clearly how they can contribute to the different groups that they're in. So that I think is really important when we're thinking about leveling up. It's okay to stay a member for one more year of a group, but you want to be kind of that next level up member. So maybe you're still a member, but you're mentoring the younger students that are coming in. You're helping them out. Maybe you don't have an official title yet, but you're the one who's doing the majority of the social media posts to advertise for your club events. Right? Maybe there's no title for that, but that's a big responsibility that you have taken on or your student has taken on that no one else was doing because you're really good at it. Great. Now we're starting to show that growth. 10th grade is also when testing and college research start to come into play. So we want to start thinking about the future majors and future colleges that your student might be interested in. We are not trying to make a concrete list carved into stone right now. Again, no pressure, but we are just starting to explore and start to think about what, again, might be a good fit for that student. So again, personality profiles and strengths profiles are a great way to help a student start to think about how do they learn best? What's most important to them? What kind of environment could be a good fit for them, both academically and then in a workplace, right? And start thinking about those kinds of things. When it comes to colleges, we start to get a little more familiar about different types of colleges, liberal arts college versus a large research institution, small schools, big schools, urban versus rural kind of location. What is that experience going to be like? HBCUs or women's colleges, all these different experiences that are out there that students can choose from. I want them to have the education around what all their options are. So again, they have an idea of what they can start to pick that's going to be a good fit for them. One way to research colleges and figure out majors at the same time is if your student has a bit of an interest in a certain major, then what I do with my students is I'll say, okay, well, you've mentioned that you might want to go to a bigger school and you're interested in psychology. Great. So then I'll pick a large, public institution that's in a state that maybe the student's interested in, and we'll go to that school's psychology department page together and start reviewing what are the classes that you would take as a psychology major? What other kind of opportunities does this university offer psychology majors? Are these of any interest to you? So we're starting to now put those pieces together of this really abstract concept for these little 15-year-old brains. And we're trying to get them to connect. Hey, here's this thing that you should have an opinion about, and you should be making these plans. And they're like, my brain is actually not developed enough to start to make those connections. So the more that we can do to make that feel a little bit more concrete and for them to start to see, okay, I'm saying I want to be a psychology major. This is what the classes would be. That helps them start to make that connection and just understand the impact of what that path could look like in real life. So we start doing that. And then this is also a great time to just start doing some really low stakes campus tours. So your sophomore is probably, they could be depending on the student, but in general, sophomores are not ready to go on a campus visit where they're going to have to sit down and have, a one-on-one conversation with an admissions rep about their goals and their interests. For many sophomores, that's a little bit too overwhelming and they might feel a little bit uncomfortable with that. The weekend visit is a great solution to that potential problem. So visiting college campuses on weekends is a great thing to do for a sophomore, because on the weekend, usually the campus tour is a little bit more pared down. It's usually going to be a small group kind of tour. There's much less chance for a one-on-one interaction because usually it's the admissions office and maybe one or two students kind of taking you around, giving you a sense of the campus, answering questions, but it's not going to be a super intense experience. So I think it's a great way for a sophomore to just have an idea of this is what a campus tour feels like. This is what to expect. This is the kind of information they're going to be giving me. And also start to get a feel for what it's like to be on different kinds of college campuses. Because at first it's just super exciting to be on a college campus. And then after a while, that excitement starts to wear off a little bit and you can start to pay attention now to the individual details and have, again, some sort of concrete reference for what people are talking about when they're talking about all these different schools. The last thing with testing, in addition to personality testing, is also SAT and ACT both have a pre or practice version of their test that schools will sometimes make available to their sophomores. So the SAT has something called the PSAT. The ACT version is the pre-ACT. And if your student has an opportunity to take one or both of those, I say go for it. It is absolutely low stakes. Colleges will not see those scores. Those scores won't get used for anything in sophomore year. It is literally just an opportunity for your student to take that test, shake off some nerves, get a little bit of a sense of what each test is like, because they're both standardized tests, but they're different from one another in style and in pacing, timing. So just give them the practice. There's no harm in taking it in general, unless your student has significant test anxiety or something else like that, in which case that would be a separate conversation to see if that would be worth them taking a practice assessment. 11th grade, we are focusing back on academics again. Okay, so academics constantly is going to be the common thread. In 11th grade, we need to reassure that 4-year plan or reassess that 4-year plan and assure that we are on that upward trend. The upward trend ends with senior year. So when students are planning their courses at the end of 11th grade for 12th grade, they need to be up at the top of the mountain. And this is also part of that 4-year plan. We don't want to burn out, let's see, like here, right? Like 11th grade, be like here. We don't want to burn out there, max out on AP classes, get so overwhelmed, be losing sleep, be tired, and then think, okay, and then senior year, I'll just take, a lower load. Now your upward trend just kind of went off a cliff. That's not a good situation, right? A weak senior year in terms of rigor is not going to do your student any favors when their application is being reviewed. And it's also not going to do them any favors when they go off to college as a freshman, because now they're going to have had a whole senior year of low rigor and fun. And now they're supposed to just walk onto a college campus without mom or dad or any of their supports. And they're living on their own for the first time. And now they're taking the hardest classes they've taken in over a year. that's a recipe for disaster. So we want to make sure that that 4-year plan ends with a rigorous senior year. Make some adjustments again as necessary. Let's make sure that we're continuing on that trend. When it comes to activities in 11th grade, we really now need to hone in. 11th grade students are taking pretty rigorous classes usually. They don't have a lot of time. They're busy, they're taking hard classes, they're prepping for their SAT and ACT, which we're going to talk about. So we need to be really intentional and thoughtful about the classes that they're taking, but also the activities that they're involved in. They may not have time to be in 6 different clubs and a varsity sport and work and this and that. There's not enough hours in the day and they need to sleep, right? So that's when now we need to start paring down and really condensing and thinking about what are the activities that are the most meaningful to your student. I ask my students to reflect. What are the top 3 things that you do that take up the most amount of your time? Like if we were thinking about your week, as a pie, obviously school is going to take up a big chunk. So let's just not do school. I would say sleep would be next, but these are 17-year-olds we're talking about. So probably not sleep, not as much as it should be. So what activities take up the most amount of your time? Let's literally sit down and do that math. And now we need to reflect. Do these activities match the way that you see yourself? Do these activities match your values? Do these activities match your interests? Do these activities match the way that you want other people to see you? Because when it comes to the activity list on the Common Application, that's how those are being used. The colleges are using literally the amount of time that the students are involved in these activities to get a good picture of who this person is. Right? Who are they? What do they value? What's their character like? So if the answer is yes, then great. If the answer is no, then we need to recalibrate, right? We need to think about pick and choose the things that are the most meaningful and really go deep on those. This is the year to be going for those leadership positions, but not across the board. You don't need to be the president of 3 different clubs. And realistically, can you actually be a super effective president of 3 different clubs and be taking all these classes and? Probably not, right? If you really think about it. But you could be a super effective president on one club that you're most passionate about. So let's do that. So this is a time again to reassess, reflect, which club and activities are the ones that are most meaningful to you, and how can you really put your mark on this organization so that when you leave, you'll be remembered, or some policy or some system or something that you contributed lives on. Really, that's the highest compliment that anybody could give, right? So think about what are you doing and what kind of legacy are you leaving with the activities that you're involved in. As I mentioned, 11th grade does bring more testing. Once we get to 11th grade, this is the testing that actually will be considered for college applications. So in October of 11th grade, students will have the opportunity to take the PSAT. So they might have taken it sophomore year just for fun. But junior year, they will take it again. And this test, the scores will not go to colleges. Colleges don't see the PSAT scores. But if your student happens to be an exceptionally strong test taker, then their score could qualify them for National Merit Scholarship semifinalist status. And they could then go through the process for the National Merit Scholarship Award. So again, that's only a very small percentage of students. The majority of students who are taking the PSAT, they're just doing it for practice. And if your student, again, unless they have significant test anxiety or some other, very specific reason to the student why we should think a little bit more about testing for them in general, it's you want your student to take the PSAT because it's going to give them practice for taking the real SAT, and more practice, more familiarity with the test is only going to help them on test day. An important thing to know for my juniors this year is that the PSAT this year is going to be different than the PSAT that you took as a sophomore. If you took it sophomore year, this year the PSAT will be digital. It will be offered on a computer. The format is changing because the SAT is changing. So this PSAT is giving you practice with what the digital SAT will look like. The digital SAT launches in March of 2024. So for my juniors, I recommend that if you go to the College Board's website, that's the company that runs the SAT, you can download a free app from their website. It is called Blue Book. That is the app that will be installed on any computer that you take the PSAT or SAT on. That is the program that you'd be taking the exam through. So I highly recommend downloading that app. You can even do practice tests on it, but it's a great way to just get yourself familiar with the format and the program, so you're not trying to figure out how to navigate the app while the clock is ticking, literally, while you're taking the PSAT. So definitely download that. Many schools, including schools here in North Carolina, will offer students the opportunity to take the ACT in school during the school day, midweek, in usually the end of February or early March. And I usually recommend that students take that opportunity. Typically, it is a free exam. And it's a great way for students to get an ACT in to see how they feel about that test format. And then I typically recommend that students also take their junior year SAT as well around that same time frame in March of junior year. March of junior year gives your student the ability to get through at least Math 3, which is the highest level math that students will typically see on these assessments. It also gives them another year of exposure to the English language classes because they will be tested on their reading and English grammar usage and skills. And then lastly, just cognitively, spring of junior year is a little bit different than fall of junior year. They grow up a lot in those couple months. So end of junior year is usually a great time. So if you are working with a test prep company, they will have their own plan for when your student should test. I would definitely defer to them if you are working with someone specific on testing. I also recommend one last thing about testing. Your student should plan to test at least twice in either the SAT or ACT, whichever one is a better test for them, because the majority of schools will allow them to submit the highest combination of scores across the different tests that they take. It's called a super score. So it typically benefits students to take the tests more than once. So plan ahead for that. The next thing that happens in 11th grade is the college search. So exciting. So this is when the college search really picks up. We started putting our toe in the water sophomore year, but junior year really is the year of the college tour. So I highly recommend that you book official campus tours through the college websites. If you just show up on campus and walk around, number one, admissions isn't even going to know you're there. So if this is a school that tracks demonstrated interest as part of their admissions review, you're not doing yourself any favors. Second of all, you're not going to have anybody giving you any context to the campus. You're going to get to see some nice buildings, but you won't really have an idea of any of the more in-depth information about that school. So I would recommend booking through the admissions office to do the official campus tour when possible. I also recommend trying to go during the week. So remember, I said my sophomores, a weekend tour is great for the sophomores, and a weekend tour is fine. If you cannot go during the week, there is nothing wrong with a weekend tour. But if you can do a tour during the weekday, that is the best way to go because all the students are going to be on campus walking around. Maybe you'll get a chance to sit in on a class, depending on the school that you're visiting. You just get a really good sense of what that campus vibe is like. And it's just going to feel different on a weekend. It just is. So if you can go during the week, I'd recommend it. But remember, teacher work days fill up like that. So if you want to have if you have a school that you really want to make sure that you see this fall and you get your county calendar and you see, okay, these are the teacher work days for the fall semester, spring semester, go on and book those dates now for those campus visits because they will fill up if you wait too long. The other thing that's a great option, though, for campus visits, now that I'm thinking of it, is spring. So spring of junior year, campuses will have junior open houses. So in the spring, you might start to get emails or see on college websites, you could go for an open house. And that's like a bigger event, lots of people on campus, people from all across campus, different offices will be out there to talk to you, presentations, get to eat in the dining hall, all that fun stuff. So spring open house is definitely something to look out for. If you wanted to do like an event on a Saturday that was going to be a bigger event, definitely keep an eye out for those open houses. So as you're visiting the colleges throughout junior year, you want to be thinking about, okay, what am I looking for? What are my key criteria? If I'm thinking about academic fit, personal fit, financial fit, 3 fit factors. So I'm thinking about those 3 things. How is this school checking the boxes for me? And start using that information to create what we call a balanced college list. So how do I feel about the school? How does the school fit me? And then how do I fit, what the typical admitted student looks like at this school? Thinking about my grades, thinking about my test scores, thinking about the classes that I've taken, right? Those are going to be that's going to be a big area of focus for those colleges. So then what percentage of students do they typically admit? Is my major more competitive or less competitive than some other majors on campus? So you can get that information. Those are great questions to ask when you're on the tour. And then you can start balancing. Okay, these are some schools where I think I have a high chance of admission. And here's some schools that I love, but I have a low chance of admission because maybe they have a really low acceptance rate. And then here's some schools in the middle that could kind of go either way, but I feel pretty good about. We want to have some from each category. So let's have a pretty good idea by the end of junior year of which schools you're going to be targeting and applying to. Towards the end of junior year, you're also going to be asking your teachers for letters of recommendation. So you want to have 2 letters from academic teachers: math, history, English, science, world language, those 5 from junior year, right? So at the beginning of the year, start thinking about, how can I make connections with these teachers? How can I make sure that they know who I am and they can tell a good story about me, right? Make those connections and ask for those letters of recommendation in about May. That's going to give the teachers the summer to write them so that you're not springing something on them last minute in the fall. It's never a good plan. So definitely work on those letters of recommendation. You're also able to ask one other recommender, but you can have multiple. I always like to have one. An other recommender is a category on the Common Application. That would be someone like a boss, a coach, someone from church, a club advisor, a mentor, an elective teacher, any of arts teachers, like any of those kind of people would be able to be submitted as an other recommender. The very last thing that I have my juniors do at the end of junior year, as we're getting ready to make that transition, is create their Common Applications. So the Common App is the platform that the majority of students here in the US use to apply to colleges. And there is a lot of information that needs to be filled in. There is some information that will not go live essentially until August 1st, right before that student's senior year. So for my class of 2024, right, my current seniors, their Common App officially opened August 1st. But we created their Common App account at the end of May, and we started filling in the student's personal information. So anything specific to a college, stay away from that. It's just going to be erased when they update everything over the summer. But anything specific to the student, so their address and their personal information and their family information, the high school they go to, all of that, that's going to stay the same, and that will save. So they can get a head start on that process and save themselves from having to do all of those things in the fall of their senior year. They can go ahead and get started early. Whew. So that was a lot of information, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming, right? I think this is the important thing, is that I just shared a ton of information. I usually don't go on this long. It is 8:38. This is probably the longest I have talked about a topic, but and we kind of stayed high level. We didn't get too in the weeds here, but I think it's really important to know, if you don't remember anything else, that this does not have to be a stressful time. This college planning process does not have to be hard or stressful or create tension between you and your student. It doesn't have to be that way, right? So when everybody's getting all stressed out and worked up, don't feed into the frenzy. If you can be really intentional and organized, seek help, work with us if you need it, if those aren't areas of strength for you. But if you can stay organized and be intentional, here's the big picture, but right now we just need to focus on this. Here's the big picture, but right now we just need to focus here. It just keeps everything moving forward, and you don't need to find it super overwhelming. It does not need to be that way. So every little piece of the journey will come, and it doesn't need to be stressful that whole time. If you found this information helpful, which hopefully you did, you can find a lot more information on our website, advcp.com. We have links there to our podcast, to our blog. We have lots of great free resources. And right now, I wanted to highlight, I'm going to show in the stream. So if you haven't been on our website lately, we just updated the information that we share with you when you sign up for information from us. So if you fill out our form here with your name and your email address, we'll send you an email with this very comprehensive, much more even in depth than what I shared here, college planning timeline document. And this really will help you map out from ninth grade all the way through to the end of 11th grade and into 12th grade as well, steps to follow with your student. So if you don't have this, I recommend doing it and going and grabbing it. If you work with us, I see some familiar names on here. If you do work with us, we're covering all of this with your student. I'm happy to share this information with you if you need it, but just know that we are following this plan. Awesome. So Q&A, again, I know this went a little bit longer than I normally do, but if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can go ahead and put them in the chat. While you are thinking about your questions, I will let you know that I'll be back here on September 10th, and I will be with my colleague Jordan, and we're going to just be talking about some really common lingo and phrases and words and acronyms that get thrown around a lot throughout the college planning process, just within higher ed, that can be confusing to families, or people hear them, but they don't really know what they mean. And it can feel like it's a different language a lot of the time. So we're just going to demystify some of those and have a little chat about the college process. So it'll be pretty informal. But if you want to check with us, we will be here on September 10th for that. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this Sunday evening. I know it's a really busy time. Some schools have already gone back and some schools are getting ready to start. I know my kids are going back on the 28th. So 1 week left to get all the fun of summer in. Okay, great. One question. What is your advice on how to prepare for college essays? Oh, great question. Yeah. So college essays. First of all, with my students and all of us at Advantage, we start our juniors getting familiar with the idea of the personal essay and start brainstorming different possible topic ideas towards the end of junior year is really when we like to get that going. And that's because we like to use the summer before senior year to get as much done as we possibly can on the application. And the essay is such a big piece of that. We like to start it early. My first advice is what we do is we back into the essay process. And what I mean by that is instead of having the students go to the Common Application and look at the 7 prompts that the Common App lists for students to write, we instead have the students go the other direction and just start thinking about what are your strengths, what are your interests, what are your values. We do a lot of different brainstorming exercises with them. Think about the story of your life. What significant events have happened? What challenges have you overcome? You know, what's an item in your bedroom that is like the perfect description of you? Like so many different things we do with them. And then we start to put together common themes. Okay, I'm starting to see this. I'm starting to see that. You know, what do you think about telling this story or that story? And then we go from there. Once we get the essay done, then the last thing, literally the last thing we do when we're copying and pasting the essay into the Common App is we decide what prompt does this match. And the 7th prompt on the Common App is always write an essay on the topic of your choice. So sometimes my students will pick one of the other prompts. They'll just realize, I ended up writing an essay that fits this. Great. But a lot of times we just choose number 7. The reason we do it this way is because after years of working with students on essays and being in admissions reading essays, we've found that if you give a student a prompt, they're just going to answer your question. And the way they've been trained to do since kindergarten, right? They get the prompt, they answer the prompt. It's very straightforward, which is perfect for an academic setting. Perfect. But this is not an academic essay. This is a personal essay that's supposed to show the college who your student is. What's their personality like? What do they value? What's their worldview? What kind of person are they going to be on this campus? And when we start with the question first, we end up coming up a little flat. So when we start with the student first, that's usually where we're getting that vulnerability and that honesty and that true reflection of who the student is. So we go backwards. The other thing tip I would say to parents is try. It's so hard. I'm a mom. I get it. But I see it from the other side too. I see it from now when the students are writing the essays. Try hard to trust the process, especially if your student is working with a consultant. But even if they're not, just trust the process. Your student might come up with what you think sounds like the most ridiculous essay topic you've ever heard in your life. And that is totally fair. But you never know where that is going to go. And so many times students will say, oh, my essay was about, my backpack, or my essay was about, something silly like chicken nuggets or something, right? But then we realize, that's actually not what your essay was about. Like, you use that tool in your essay to be able to talk about yourself. Your essay was not about the topic. Your essay was really about you. So just understanding that there's no topic that is, I'll just say, there's really no topic that's off limits. Generally, with an asterisk. Maybe there's something horribly offensive, right? We wouldn't want them to write that, but students literally can write about anything. So just be open-minded to it. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Wendy. I love working with her too. So thanks so much. Thanks for being here. Awesome. Great. All right. Well, I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And again, if you are around and home and free on September 10th, come back and you'll find me here. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great, great night. Bye.